Now, I got a call the other day from a writer. His name is Zach Rosenblatt. He writes for The Athletic, and he wanted to talk about this now infamous fight that happened in 2005 between the Jets and the Giants. It was up in Albany, New York. I remember it not fondly, but I remember it vividly. Really, his questions were around Jeremy Shockey and why Shockey was such an intense player. And he asked me all of these questions about, his early brawl with Brandon Short when he was asked about his signing bonus and had to sing his alma mater. And Jeremy said basically F you. And he and B Short got into a fight. And it was like, dude, this is amazing. We got this stud now on the offensive side of the ball. We very rarely had that emotional kind of leader for this Giants team until Shockey came. And ultimately, he became a little bit of our identity, right? He changed the toughness of our team, and it all culminated in a joint practice between the Giants and the Jets up in Albany, as I said, which led to a brawl because Oliver Celestine and Eric Coleman decided to get in Shockey's face. And just like with Brandon Short, Jeremy Shockey responded. And before you know it, those two were brawling with Shockey, and then Jonathan Vilma jumped on, and later in the practice, Amani got drilled, and then Chris Snee was ripping people's heads off, and it was awesome in a way that football should be awesome in the summer. So in training camps, at least in how they used to be, they're not this way anymore because they've done away with two-a-days. It's really about player safety. But back in those days, you would work and work and work and work. Your body would be worn down. Your mind would be worn down. You got sick and tired of seeing the same people over and over and over again. That is your teammates. 2 times a day in the heat and the humidity of Albany or wherever training camp would be. And so when another team came in, whether that was a preseason game or a joint practice, which we very rarely did, it almost re-energized you in a way that it's hard to explain. And so fights were inevitable. But fights that turned into what happened with the Giants and the Jets in 2005 are ultimately detrimental. Donnie Henderson, who was the defensive coordinator at the time of the New York Jets, he was brought in to change their culture. As we all remember, Herm had come there at 10-6 his first year. They lost in the wild card. They go 9-7 the following year. They lose in the divisional round. And then 6-10 his third year, and it just felt like things were falling apart. So they bring in Donnie Henderson to change the mentality. And he was all about, you got to put your hats on people. You got to hit people. You got to play tough. Like all of this like old football narrative that makes you be aggressive and I don't know, just angry all the time. And that's ultimately what led to this brawl in this Giants and Jets training camp joint practice. And I bring this up now because I think that both of the Giants and Jets, who are set to practice today in a joint practice, and I just sent a note to Coach Dable and asked him, what's the intensity of this practice? Is it full pads? He's like, full pads. I was like, all right, no more brawls. So we don't want to revisit a 2005. But the reason I bring this up is because the Giants and the Jets are at important points in their redevelopment of culture. Just because just like Donnie Henderson was brought in to change the culture of the Jets back in 2004, and he did. He made them intense, but it ultimately fell apart because there wasn't a lot of cohesion or communication. Paul Westhoff, who was the special teams coordinator, hated that brawl. Herman Edwards said nothing about it. Donnie, at this point, doesn't even remember it. At least he says he doesn't remember it, which tells you that there was a disconnect between what the defensive coordinator wanted, what the head coach wanted, what the special teams coach wanted, what the team was really all about. And so there was this facade of a development of a culture, but in actuality, it didn't lead anywhere. The real culture came for the Jets when Rex Ryan became the head coach, and he became this crazy distractionary but awesome head coach for this team, and they go to 2 AFC championship games. And when I look at both the Jets and the Giants, but most specifically the Jets right now, they needed for a long time a change of culture. The Giants did too, to an extent, but obviously the Giants have 2 Super Bowls in 2007 and 2011. So you get excused for going through a little bit of a melee. But the Jets have been through one for 15 years, it feels like. It feels like you can't remember the last time that you knew what the Jets stood for and what they were all about. And so this season, with Robert Saleh as the head coach, with Mike LaFleur as their offensive coordinator, with Jeff Ulbrich, their defensive coordinator, who is all ball. I'm not saying he's exactly like Donnie Henderson, but he is similar to this. He's detail oriented. He's got a ton of toughness. He's the essence of a linebacker who just goes in and aggressively attacks the football. And so as I look at this Jets team, and I hear C.J. Mosley saying things like, we're playoffs or bust. You hear this excitement start to build from a Jet fan standpoint, this build around what should be a new culture. I think the Jets are at a point where what happens this week and then what happens in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the regular season could define what this new regime is all about. And that's dangerous because if it's not focused, if it's not detailed, then anything can become your MO. Like that 05 Jets team, which wanted to be cerebral because Chad Pennington was their quarterback on offense, but wanted to be a pain in the ass because Jonathan Vilma and all these other guys were on defense. They'd wanted to do it the smart way because Paul Westhoff, who was a special teams coordinator, wanted to play tough and do it the smart way. If you stand for too many things, it becomes almost impossible to stand for anything. This is the challenge that I think that Robert Saleh has right now with this Jets team. Because it's easy to speak culture. It's easy to say we're going to do X, Y, Z. It's easy to say, well, we got this talent on the offensive line. It's easy to say, well, we found our quarterback. It's easy to say we got skill around our quarterback and our defense has some veteran leaders and things. It's easy to say all these things. But to actually execute those things is something that Robert Saleh has to do in year 2. He has to define himself. It can't just be, well, we're this on offense and we're this on defense and we're this, and as far as, above the X's and O's. Robert Saleh, who was a rookie head coach last year, who had the benefit of being that rookie head coach last year, is not going to get that benefit for long. He has to define this team, and he has to do it now. And he's at a little bit of a disadvantage because his quarterback, and Zach Wilson, is out. So as I look at this joint practice as it comes to a head this afternoon, it's really, as much as we want to, we'll get to the Giants in a second. And later on in the show, we're going to have Victor Cruz join us, Super Bowl champion, back from that 11 team, who is he's an iconic player, even though he didn't have a tremendously long career. He's an iconic player in Giants lore. He'll join us at 11:15, and we'll get his takes on this Giants team and where he thinks they can go. But really, this is a focus on the Jets. The Jets have had to need to change their identity and their culture for years, and they have a shot to do it because I like their coaching staff. I really do. I like some of their talent. But if it's not defined, this Jets team's going to fall back in that same circle of being undefined and not having a culture that creates a melees around an organization and a distrust in whether a team can actually win or lose. Going to take all your calls here as well, 877-337-6666. And don't forget our friends at Town Fair Tire. Remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. You can follow us at twitch.tv/WFAN or on our free Odyssey app if you need to jump off and watch it on television or watch it on your phone. But again, 877-337-6666. So I go back to those 04 teams. At 04, because I remember what happened with the New York Giants. Obviously, I was a part of the organization. 04 was Tom Coughlin's first year. He comes in. He's trying to change the way the culture is and be there early, get there on time, attention to details. It was clearly defining what our culture was going to be. And it ultimately paid itself off because in 2007, as we all remember, they won a Super Bowl. And the Giants were a tough-minded, detail-oriented, let's play hard with an offensive line. Let's run the ball, but let's do smart things with our offense. And you could see it, and it kind of started to develop back in 2005. Whereas the Jets, they went the other way, and they went 0-4 in that first year in 04. They went 10-6. Then they immediately fell to 4-6. Or 4-12, I should say, and then they go 10-6 again, and it was just like this roller coaster that they were riding up and down and up and down. And when I think about this Jets team now, I hope that that's not it's their future, because I think they have all the right pieces. But when I think about their head coach and I think about their defensive coordinator, I think about their offensive coordinator, I can't find the identity yet. And so much of this depends on the quarterback. And I know it's early, still second-year head coach, second-year offensive coordinator, second-year young quarterback in Zach Wilson. But we know with New York, you get defined and pegged really early. And I know it's unfair, but in New York, it doesn't have to be fair. You have to have results, especially when you have your veteran leaders like C.J. Mosley saying which team is going to the playoffs, especially when you have this expectation that's floated around this team that we added offensive line help. We drafted well. We had the first or second best offseason in football. This Jets team needs to identify itself early. And I'm not saying it's going to start in this joint practice with the New York Giants, because who knows what this practices are going to look like because of how the practice rules have changed. But it needs to happen. And the biggest test for this Jets team is going to be Robert Saleh's command of this program and command of their identity. 877-337-6666. Let's get some of your calls here. Michael out in Stony Brook. What's up, Michael? Welcome to the Fan.
Hey, Mr. Tiki, thank you for taking my call.
Pleasure, dude. What's up?
I'm not that optimistic about the Jets' season or future, for that matter. I think they have a big problem at both tackle positions. You got a 37-year-old that they just signed.
Yep.
And Fant's coming off knee surgery. And there's some alarms about Zach. I mean, if he doesn't show some real progression, something that you could see develop into a top 10 quarterback, and you have a good core, I think they're going to have to cut the cord after this year.
I mean, two years is quick, but it's interesting, Michael, because I've started to fall into that same category with young quarterbacks, because we heard it last year with Tua. Remember down in Miami, right? If he doesn't get it done next season, meaning last season, then you got to cut bait with him. You got to go try to draft another guy. Now he got another year because he was just good enough, but Zach is hurt now, and I hate to say it because it's kind of freaks things that happen. Last year was the same way. He's been hurt a lot in a year, not even 2 years, a year and a little bit. He's been hurt a lot, and the last thing you need is an unreliable young quarterback, as well as one who's not productive. If you needed to, as you're a Jets fan, I'm assuming, Michael, right? Michael, you still there? I think Michael may have dropped, but I wonder, as a Jet fan, I wonder what you think the identity is of this Jets team. Because as I think about it, I can't place it right now. I can't say this team is going to play smart. I can't say this team is going to play mistake-free. I can't say this team is going to play tough. Like, I can't figure what the identity of this Jets team is. Now, the preseason game last week, it was ugly. Even though they won the game, but it was ugly how some of the ways they got beat. Now, and Marcus Mariota played really well. Desmond Ridder played really well for the Atlanta Falcons. Michael Pitts, he torched my guy Breece Hall from UVA. But I can't think of the identity of this Jets team, and that's the biggest task for Coach Saleh right now. This team has to have an identity. You have to stand for something, otherwise you get lost in the murk of trying to figure it out. You get lost in the confusion of, well, what's going to work and what's not going to work, because they're both young. He's young, and his offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, is young. If you don't create that identity early, and it's going to start this week, right? This is the week where You're having a joint practice. You're going to play this last preseason game. The starters got to play a little bit. They didn't play at all in week 2. You got to identify what you're going to be, and it needs to start right now if you're the Jets. Let's get Brian, who is down in Tampa, Florida. Brian, welcome to the Fan. What's happening?
Hey, how you doing, Tiki?
I'm good. How are you?
This is my second time calling. I'm the guy that met you at the airport at your boy's bachelor party in Puerto Rico.
Oh, nice. That's right. Wow, that was a minute ago. That was a long time ago.
And actually, that call, BT hung up on me because, when he gets, when you get a little negative, I am a Jets fan, but when you get a little negative talking about the Jets, BT tends to get rid of you real quick.
Exactly. He'll dump you quick. But I didn't get a chance to ask Michael, the previous caller, because he fell off. But what do you think the identity is of your Jets team? What is it?
Well, that I'm not sure because we had a great draft, this year.
Yes.
And kind of. We've been on that carousel of, get a coach, see if it works out, doesn't work out, get another coach. We went to, Todd Bowles, Adam Gase, and then we get a quarterback, Sam Darnold, doesn't work out. So we're like kind of on this carousel. And, it used to be the defense, back in the Rex Ryan years. So
yep.
I really don't know.
Yeah. And but I think that's the problem. And this is why this is so critical. And I know it's young, and I appreciate your call, Brian. Maybe I'll catch you again one of these days when I head down to Puerto Rico for a bachelor party. No, it's not going to happen again. We're not going to see each other at the airport heading to Puerto Rico. But that's why, I hate to say it, and I hate to, put this undue pressure. But in New York, that pressure happens. It kind of just you can't avoid it. I was talking to my brother the other day, last weekend, in fact, and we were talking about young quarterbacks and how you just know. And I think we had this conversation with BT as well. You just know, right? You can see it from the first season or two. You see it. There's got to be a spark. There's got to be a that's the guy that we drafted. This is the guy I can see developing into a long-term solution for us. And you saw it with Patrick Mahomes, you saw it with Josh Allen, you saw it with Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, all these, and you can push back on what you think the ultimate season ceiling is of all those guys. But there was that you can play and be successful in the NFL moment from all of those guys. We haven't seen that yet from Zach. Now, if we're going to say, well, he didn't turn the ball over in his last 4 games, that's just because you're very conservative. That's because you're not taking shots. You're not taking chances. You're not taking shots down the field. But that's not saying you're going to be that guy. This Jets team, and again, joint practice today with the Giants. There's going to be a lot of attention on what happens. I hope that there's not a fight like there was back in 2005. But there's a lot of question marks going into this last preseason game with the regular season and the Baltimore Ravens right around the corner for this Jet team. What's their identity? What's Zach Wilson going to be? What does Robert Saleh have to do to make this team successful, especially when you get some people talking about this team's going to the postseason? I'm not so sure. 877-337-6666.